Okay, so today's video will be about compounds. A compound is a pure substance that is made up of two or more elements that are combined. So it's similar to an element that is a pure substance. The substance is only made of one type of matter. But that matter is made up of two or more elements that are combined. They're not elements that are floating around close to each other, but they are chemically joined together. They can be broken into simpler parts, so this is unlike an element. Remember, elements cannot be broken down. Compounds can be broken into simpler parts, but it can be difficult. They are joined together tightly, and sometimes it's hard to break the elements, atoms, apart from each other. Compounds are not on the periodic table. So water, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, compounds you may have heard of, none of those will be listed on the periodic table because they are not elements, they are compounds. But the elements they are made up of, those will be listed on the periodic table separately. But the compounds themselves are not on the periodic table. Okay. The properties of a compound. Properties of a compound can be the same or very different from the elements that are in it. So a good example is water. It has hydrogen and oxygen in it. The properties of hydrogen, it's a gas at room temperature. It's very flammable, has a very extremely low density, which we'll talk about next class. And oxygen is the same. It's a gas, it's very flammable, colorless. Okay, gases, flammable, very dangerous. Water, when hydrogen and oxygen combine chemically, water is a liquid at room temperature. It is not flammable, and it has a medium density. And we'll talk about density next class. So again, the properties of a compound can be the same as what makes it up, or it can be completely different. The properties of the elements don't matter when you talk about the properties of the compound. Okay. Next is a chemical formula. So the chemical formula is a list of the elements in a compound and how many atoms there are of each. So we list the chemical symbols for each element that's in that compound, and we put a number for how many of that element are in the compound. We'll do some examples. So to find out how many elements are in a compound, we count the capital letters. So remember we said for the chemical symbol, you always capitalize the first letter. So there are 3 capital letters, and there are 3 different elements. To find out how many atoms are in the compound, you add up the numbers. So there are these little numbers next to the letters, and you add those up. If there is no number for an element, you add a 1. So like here, there's no number next to the O, so that would be a 1. So let's do these 3 as an example. The first one is water. It is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. So to find out how many elements are in your compound, you count the capital letters. So 1, 2. There are 2 different elements that make up water. To find out how many total atoms there are, you add up the numbers. So there are 2 hydrogen atoms, 2, and there's no number here, so we add a 1, so there's 1 oxygen atom. So 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. So there are 3 total atoms. So you have 2 types of elements, but one of those elements you have 2 atoms of, and then the one element you have 1 atom of. So you have 3 total atoms. Let's do carbon dioxide. How many elements are in carbon dioxide? 1, count capital letters, 2. So there are 2 different elements, carbon and oxygen, in carbon dioxide. How many atoms are there? Well, there's 1 carbon. Remember, there's no number here, so that's a 1. And then in oxygen, there are 2 of those. So 1 carbon and 2 oxygen. So again, there are 3 atoms in carbon dioxide, 1 carbon, 2 oxygen. 2 different types of elements with 3 total atoms. And then lastly, I kind of made this one up, we have iron, hydrogen, and carbon. you count the capital letters. You don't count this little e because it goes along with iron. So 1, 2, 3 types of elements: iron, hydrogen, carbon. How many total atoms are there? How many total atoms are there? Well, there's no number next to iron, so that's 1. There's no number next to hydrogen, so that's 1. And then there's a 6 next to carbon. So that's 6 plus your 1 iron plus your 1 oxygen, so 8 total. So to know how many types of elements are in it, you count the capital letters. And then to know how many total atoms there are, you count the little numbers. If there's no number, you add a 1. Okay. So something you might have heard of in elementary school was a mixture. And a lot of kids will get compounds and mixtures confused. And here are a couple points that I want you to remember. A compound is a pure substance. A compound is only made up of one type of matter. So if you have pure water, that water is only made up of water molecules, is what they're called, but it's only made up of water. If you have a mixture, that is a bunch of different types of matter all mixed in together. And they usually have you think of a salad. So you have lettuce and tomato and cheese and dressing and bacon bits and croutons and carrots. You have a bunch of different types of stuff all mixed in together. Where a compound would just be one type of matter, one thing. That matter is made up of more than one element that are joined together, but it's still just one type of matter. Compounds are difficult to separate. So remember, those atoms are very tightly joined together, and it is possible to separate them, but it's not very easy. Where a mixture is easily separated. If you have a salad, you can just pick out the carrots. Or if you have sugar and water, then you can just strain or evaporate the water off of it. So the difference between compounds and mixtures: compounds are pure substances, mixtures are not. Compounds are difficult to separate, and mixtures are not.